My name is Jonathan Mitchell, and I had the honor of being Grandpa Mitchell's grandson for 37 years. I'm a school teacher and a coach, so I give speeches pretty much every day. Of all the speeches in my life, I don't think I've ever thought about one more than this one. I was nervous writing this speech because Grandpa deserves a perfect send-off. I've learned that one standard way of starting a speech is starting with a definition. So I looked up the word grandpa. The dictionary told me that a grandpa is a male relative who is the biological father of either the biological mother or the biological father. But that definition doesn't even come close to what Grandpa Mitchell means to me. To me, a grandpa is a linguist. No, my grandpa didn't speak Spanish or French or German, but he had a way of talking that felt like a different language, as he had inserted sayings such as, "I think the Hawks should win tonight, but of course I may be all wet," or "that family has oodles and oodles of money," or "that Davenport is as old as the hills." The way he talked made you think about what he was saying rather than half-heartedly listening and doing the courtesy nod. To me, a grandpa is a historian. Grandpa Mitchell lived to be 97 years old. The U.S. history books were pretty much written about his lifetime, including growing up in the Great Depression, being on the home front during World War II. Heck, he was even middle-aged by the time the hippies arrived in the 60s. Driving around town with him was a history lesson. As he pointed out, what businesses were located here, there, in decades past. Grandpa made history cool and interesting because it was his firsthand account about it. To me, a grandpa is a chauffeur. Grandpa drove me to school every morning and picked me up every afternoon. In elementary school, he was always one of the first voices I heard in the morning as he'd call up the stairs in his deep voice. "Wake up, John boy, it's time to go to school." After a busy day, Grandpa was the first person that I got a debrief about my school day. It's amazing how a daily 5-minute ride can build an unbreakable foundation in a relationship. My grandpa invested in my education. How could I not invest in it too? To me, a grandpa is a participator. So not only would I see Grandpa Monday through Friday for school, but he'd come to my basketball and soccer games on the weekends. After each game, Mom, Dad, and Grandma would stand around and talk for a while. Grandpa would always pull me off to the side and rattle off my stats and make me feel special. My last photo is of him at the downtown Y in December. At 97 years old, he was still going to ball games. But this time it was for my son, Julius. Grandpa was a mainstay at my brother's races, even into his 90s. Birthdays, he was there. Holidays, he was there. Sunday night suppers, he was there. Stopping over in the middle of the day rather than going to study hall, Grandpa's door was always open. Grandpa was always there. To me, a grandpa is a teacher. My grandpa never graduated high school, but he was the best of teachers. In middle school, he taught me how to fish. Every week, he would go out to eat lunch, and then we'd head to Lake McBride, Hannon Lake, or Palo. We'd sit there with all these ancient fishing poles that had thick black ropes, not the transparent lines like newer poles have today. And he'd teach me how to be silent and patient, which is a tough skill for an 11 or 12-year-old boy. He'd also talk to me about people in our family that passed before I was born. His folks, Grandma's folks, distant relatives. He taught me morals. If the bass was half an inch too short to keep, then we threw it back. No questions asked. To me, a grandpa is a therapist. The first major death in my life was Grandma Mitchell. I was 12 years old. Grandma died slightly after midnight, after the family spent the evening by her hospital bed. That night, Grandpa Mitchell and I rode home in silence to his house. We got to his house and we sat at the kitchen table for a minute or two until he said, "Well, I suppose it's time to go to bed." The next week, I slept every single night at Grandpa's house, just Grandpa and I. We went to the funeral home, this very spot, to finalize Grandma's arrangements. We ate together. We never once discussed our feelings. But as my world was crumbling, I desperately needed to be surrounded by him. To me, a grandpa is a friend. We supported each other. We celebrated each other. We gossiped together. I didn't have to second guess my actions or words around Grandpa. I could just be my authentic self. See, you don't get to pick your family, but you get to pick your friends. I pick Grandpa every single time. He was a true friend of mine. So how do you wrap up a speech like this? Great speakers will tell you to briefly summarize the main points of your speech. But I don't want to finish just yet, because subconsciously it feels like that would be saying goodbye. So I'm going to ask a favor of each of you. If your grandfather is still alive, make his day and call him today. If you're lucky enough to be a grandfather, tell your grandkids about your grandparents and introduce them to another generation through your stories. See, Grandpa Mitchell is much more than a male a couple branches above me on the family tree. Grandpa Mitchell is a linguist, a historian, a chauffeur, a participator, a teacher, a therapist, and a friend. He was my hero. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm Pastor Ted Groth. I serve as senior pastor at Trinity Lutheran Church in Cedar Rapids, where your loved one was a member and where he received gifts from Christ in his word and sacraments